Live from LeadFeather Studios, it's the most controversial film podcast on the air. I Don't Give a Flick!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of I Don't Give a Flick. I am your host, Jonny Blackburn, and alongside me this week, as they are unfortunately every week, can't seem to get rid of them, but I love them nonetheless, I've got my co-hosts,
Gary Elmore.
And Neil Riley.
And of course, the incomparable Neil Riley. And this week we are fortunate, nay privileged, to have with us for the first time, popping his cherry on our show at least. We've got Texas filmmaker and host of the very popular Beware How show, Bob Peck. Bob, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And returning again, as he is on pretty much every other episode that we ever record, we've got the host of the Cult and Trash Horror Movie Grind, Ian Webb. Ian, welcome back again.
I said a hip, a hop, a hip to the hip hop. You don't stop a rock till the bang bang boogies. Said up jump the boogies to the rhythm to the boogie the beat.
That is one hell of a way to start off this episode. Talk about loving your life. Talk about it, guys.
Oh, yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, I don't know. Like, how do I love my life? That's really the question.
What is life?
Deep question.
Yeah,
it is a deep question.
That is an interesting question. You asked me.
Is life worth loving? Is love worth the life given to it? You know, I mean, hell,
we'll find out after these messages.
After these messages from our sponsors, Bounty and Coca-Cola. Just kidding. Right, here come the lawsuits. Anyways, if you guys can't tell at this point, this week's episode, we're going to be talking about existentialism in film, and we'll
How on earth could they have told at this point? We're talking about
Gary. Because all of our listeners and our subscribers, they get the itinerary sent to them weekly.
You know, I guess it will be in the title and in the synopsis. So
yeah. And then the jokes we were making too might just be an indication. That
objection withdrawn.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Excellent. All right. I'm glad we're off to a good start. We'll save the arguing for halfway through the episode. So we will be jumping into literally hopefully maybe not every movie, but hopefully every mainstream film, and some new indie and art house ones that you guys may not have heard of before. That's why we definitely always love to bring Ian on, because he loves that world
baby.
That's right, all those indie films that most of you guys that are just average moviegoers probably haven't heard of before. And certainly any suggestions that Bob's going to bring to the forum as well. So let's jump right into it. So Bob, since this is your first episode with us, our listeners have not been exposed to you yet. So I kind of just wanted to give you a minute to kind of tell us how you got into film, and I guess with the philosophy and all of the things that you guys talk about on your show, projects you've done in the past. Give us a little knowledge on you.
Sure, Johnny. Thanks. I know these guys from good old South Austin, Texas.
Amen, baby.
We're all former theater boys, and
that's right.
I ended up going to UT for film. Did RTF there for did the 5th year for a religion degree as well. I was telling Johnny this last night, but basically I was smoking a lot of cannabis and making movies, and all my electives were in religion or comparative religion and philosophy. And so I stuck around for another year to get a bachelor's in that as well. And so I have 2 useless degrees, film and religion.
All right.
And basically started making docs pretty much right after school, about advocacy, spirituality,
nice,
kind of a variety of topics, but really did that for a while, and then kind of had some difficulties. In Austin, it's super competitive. There's a lot of creative people, and as I'm sure you guys know, and maybe we'll talk about tonight, but the film biz really is still in LA and New York at large. So I wanted to stay in town, and ended up learning marketing to be able to stay here, and got a job in big tech a few years ago. So kind of marketing is the daily bread here, and but staying busy nights and weekends, doing film projects, working on a few different things. But yeah, it's been about 10 years in film now.
Oh man!
Right.
So can you give us a little background on some of the docs that you had been working on, or the ones you're currently working on still? What did they focus on primarily?
Yeah, like I said, mostly started on like religious studies docs. So my first documentary coming out of school was about yoga and Christianity. I basically was reading a lot of kind of both Hindu philosophy and was taking classes on like New Testament scholarship and formative Christianity, and found it super interesting, kind of despite leaving the church. And I saw there was an article about a pastor in Seattle named Mark Driscoll who was calling yoga demonic. And kind of
Are you serious?
pretty no media buzz basically kind of thing, but it's kind of like the branch of Christianity that ain't a big fan of gay people and Muslims, and like you know that group of religiosity type of people have also unsurprisingly have an issue with yoga. And yeah, I just thought that would be an interesting topic for a film to kind of go around interviewing yogis, Christians, scholars, swamis, kind of anybody I could talk to that is in either of those two fields, and talk about similarities and differences. And it was a lot of fun. It was 18 interviews total. But it took me about 2.5, 3 years back. Finished in 2015. It was kind of like my first big project. Played at a few film festivals. It's called, the name of the film is called The Kingdom Within, from the Gospel of Luke, which is like basically yogis, the favorite line of all yoga gurus. And yeah, played at a few film festivals. I licensed it to Gaia, which is an online streamer about spirituality topics. It's kind of like a B tier streamer. And that process was a little crazy, but anyway, that was kind of my first big project, and did not make very much money off of it. They gave me a decent check, and I was like, this is 3 years of worth of work. And so started branching off into client work, and you know you guys filmed the production house, which is really super awesome. And you know, did some of that work for brands and clients and stuff like that. And it was tough. It was really hard for me. So like I said, learned marketing right around that time, 2015 or so, and then continued to make stuff. I've made a short film series about American Muslim experience, kind of like with the rise of like basically the rise of Trump and the rise of like kind of fundamentalist republicanism, and kind of just Islamophobia. So just interviewing Muslims about their life and just kind of like normalizing it. And it sounds kind of antiquated now in 2022, but that was the goal for that. The series was called Peace is Boring, about how pretty much at that time, it was like 2016, 2015, most of the coverage of Muslims in America, it was about extreme, fundamentalist groups, which is like 0.01% of Muslims worldwide. And so it was just like kind of it was like right around the time that there was a show, I think on History Channel or Nat Geo, that came out kind of doing something similar. And so just humanizing people, trying to do that. And yeah, had a good time with that.
Question for you, sir.
Sure.
So you said that you kind of went around and for your first show, and then or your first documentary and your second one, you go around and conduct a whole bunch of different interviews. And for the first one, you did 18, and then it took you like 3 years to kind of get all those done. So what? I guess what took so long at the time? Because surely conducting the interviews would be like maybe one afternoon per person. I'm just curious about how, like, I assume you did your own editing on that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it sounds like a long time now looking back, doesn't it? What I did was I pretty much put it together as I went along. It was like my first feature doc, so I didn't really know what I was doing. And what is pretty much the the best thing about documentary filmmaking is you don't really know how it's going to end up. Whereas in narrative, you really do. You have the whole script written, you're meticulous about it. But with documentary, you start with a topic, maybe a few questions and a couple of interviewees, and start filming. And so what happens is you have 2 or 3 people, and then when they finish the first interview, if it goes well, you'll be packing up, and they'll say, hey, you should go film this person. This is my colleague, or this is a person that might be interesting. And so you kind of follow this rabbit hole that's unique to your own experience. And that, I probably filmed 12 or so by the first year. But then just working with the footage and figuring out what the segments are, and then you kind of have a cut and you realize what's missing and where you need to fill it in. And so it can be a pretty gradual process. I think probably a big piece of it was I actually found a really fascinating story in year 3, which is a guy his name's Richie Flores. He was a guy who grew up Catholic, kind of had run-ins with the law, was imprisoned, kind of in and out of jail, and found yoga in prison, and it kind of improved not only his relationship, kind of spiritual relationship, but also like transformed him in many ways, and he became this kind of phoenix from the ashes, if you will, in prison, doing like yogic postures in solitary, and just like came out of jail like the 5th or 6th time as like this yoga master. And that ended up taking up like a 1/4 of the movie, and I was like already so close to being done, but it was such a good story that it helped break up a lot of the conceptual parts of it. But yeah,
okay, well,
it's a long answer, but
I have a lot of documentary questions for you. This isn't the right episode, though, so we'll get back to that.
Cool. I'll come back and talk about it. Yeah,
but it's really interesting, and I'd like to hear more.
It is, yeah.
Thanks,
yeah. That's documentaries are not. That's not really a foray that we've delved into quite yet. So yeah, definitely for a future episode, we'd love to have you back for that. But so for this one, so for your podcast, Bob, for the Beware House Show, can you kind of give us a brief little rundown? I watched I listened to the episode where you guys had Aaron Conrado on,
nice.
And then that was a really good one. That was really fun. So what inspired you guys to start this? Was it just you by yourself and slowly your host trickled in over time, or was it like a big group, your brainstorming session? You're like, we have to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, it was probably not too dissimilar from you guys. I have a few friends kind of across the country. It was it's really started with my buddy Scott Stanley, who you guys probably remember.
Sure. Absolutely.
Fellow Bulldog, and he was in Chicago at the time. It was like I think 6 months actually before the pandemic, and we would have like 90-minute phone calls, and after like the 3rd one, we were like, we covered some interesting things. Let's let's record these and see what happens, and added on a friend from there, and it really just kind of snowballed into being a fun thing to hang out and talk and meet new people and kind of resurface old friends, and it was really great. It's on hold for now. I'm doing too many other things right now, but
sure.
But we did 29 episodes, so it's definitely like a thing that exists on the internet.
Yeah. So how would you define that podcast? Is it a philosophical podcast? Is it a religious podcast? Is it kind of all encompassing? What primarily are you guys focusing on?
Yeah, it's spiritual relevant. It's like I think we said like spirituality, creativity, mindfulness, philosophy, kind of things that like if I drink enough coffee or enough liquor, I'll talk about anyway, kind of thing.
Yeah. Have an out-of-body experience kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
That'd be something I'm actually interested in.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Cool, man. So that's a perfect segue into our topic for this evening. The first set we have up here is for those for those of you that follow us normally, if you're not familiar with what existentialism is or the theory surrounding that, I want to go ahead and give our two guests here, our resident experts, an opportunity to kind of put it in layman's terms for those of you that may not be terribly familiar with it. So, Ian, since this episode was actually your idea from a few months ago, I'm going to let you start us off.
Was it?
Well, not necessarily, and yeah, to my knowledge, a couple months ago, you had mentioned it to me. You're like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this?" Anyways, but
I think you actually brought it to me, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds good. Can I be on that?"
But that you said maybe it was the other, maybe it was the guy that I was standing. Pretty sure it was you.
Way.
Either way, though, why don't you start us off? So if you were to, what does it mean to you personally, and how would you explain it to a 5-year-old?
Okay, well, me personally, like, I did not go to college, and I'm a very full of shit person, so don't take anything I say as fact. But so,
I never do. Kidding.
Great attitude.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not an expert on the subject of existentialism. I am, however, somebody who spent way too much time by myself and has quandered what like does it mean to be human. Like, it's really like the question of like, why are we here, what's our purpose, yeah, but like, yeah, what does it mean to be human? And basically, yeah, it's like, I mean, that pretty much does it right there, I'd say. To
all right, short and sweet. I love it.
It's worth investigating.
Yeah. But absolutely, and like, if you I mean, that's definitely a question that one can really like lose your mind on if you think too deeply on, which I may or may not have done so myself in the past. But I have no answers for you, though.
Yeah, we might all not be sleeping tonight. We might this episode might open up too many doors and start answering too many questions. Bob, how about you? What does existentialism mean to you? And how would you explain it to a young child, someone who's not terribly familiar with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ian's right on. It's a very reflective philosophical movement. I guess I can be the pretentious guy tonight, but basically,
please.
According to the definition or whatever, it's a philosophical theory that emphasizes the existence of the individual person as a free and responsible agent, determining their own development through acts of the will. So a bunch of really great thinkers, far greater than I, that pondered the implications of that. And I think it seems like, in my fairly limited understanding as well about existentialism, that it comes out of like typically like hyper religious cultures, like Nietzsche and Kierkegaard are both like two of the early guys, and they came out of extremely Christian countries, and so they were like, how can we kind of step outside of the framework of this very rigid system? And I think that definitely applies to modern America in a lot of ways. We kind of stuck where we're becoming a post-Christian society kind of right now, and so
it does feel like it, doesn't it?
Exploring that, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So if we're following along here, you see, I had put on tonight's itinerary. I had come across a couple articles, and one in particular that struck me was a senior thesis from a kid at Vanderbilt. And he had put in that lots of people travel through life not fully comprehending or even considering these ideas, which we're mentioning and talking about right now. So in this goes to all the panel, not just our guests. Does having a better understanding of these different schools of thought make us more well-rounded individuals and appreciate our existence more? And then in turn, we'll transition into how this opens up film and film theory. But Gary, let's go to you, and we'll start out with the host. What do you think? I mean, do you think it's imperative that philosophical, and not even just existentialism by itself, but other theories of philosophy, is it something that we should try to look into more and talk about more? Like, should we be talking about this at the water cooler as opposed to, did you guys catch the last night's episode of Peacemaker, or Real Housewives of Orange County? I don't know. What do you think?
I think that if I worked in an office that people stood around the water cooler talking about existentialism and humanity, that would be the most fucking awesome office building to work in. Like if people said, like what's that?
Love it.
The Denzel Washington and oh, I can't remember the actress, but they recently did a Macbeth that just came out last year.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So Macbeth is an excellent study in what is fate versus what is choice.
Right.
And
Francis McDormand. Sorry.
Francis McDormand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you could, if people stood around talking about that, I think the world would be a much better place rather than if they just kind of sat around and gossiped about random crap. Like if we had like the parlors of the 19th century back where you would invite like a guest to discuss some high philosophical idea. I think that would be good. And I think that it can seem daunting to kind of tackle that because when you hear a word like existentialism or nihilism, you're like, this is something that's really, going to be out of my wheelhouse or going to be boring or going to be too difficult to understand. But really, that's just sort of the human complexities that drive us all. Like if you've ever read or watched Shakespeare, you have some understanding of quite a lot of philosophies. And as you may or may not know, I am quite a fan of the Bard. Right, Bob? Yeah, he knows it. He knows it.
Absolutely. I want more of that tonight.
And
yeah.
so endeth my monologue.
Well said, Care.
Thank you.
So, Bob, how about you?
Are you not passing to Neil?
Oh, I can go.
The ball was passed to you, Bob. The ball was passed to you.
What about Bob?
I was just thinking that.
That should have been my Discord name.
Yes.
Should have.
I echoing Gary. I mean, I think that and it also it's a tightrope a little bit because I think you can quickly get into the like there. I agree with Gary that I would prefer that people think about and talk about these kinds of issues. I've been making documentaries about religion and spirituality. It's thought-provoking material is I think profoundly beneficial for people and worthwhile and yet it doesn't seem to hit. I was joking with Jonny last night that there was like this really big Netflix show on religion. I don't even remember the name of it. Maybe that's a bad example, but it's like literally the voice of God, covering religion on Netflix, and nobody watched it.
The Morgan Freeman one, yeah,
the Morgan Freeman one. So it's a tough topic. You can even have like the highest production quality around it, and it's still not for everybody necessarily. But I think to Gary's point, it would be really useful for people to explore that more. But also what I don't want to do is like call out all the sheeple, you know what I mean? Like, I think that there's a lot of people that kind of when they first start investigating some of this stuff, it can be frustrating, right? To like look around and like be like, why isn't everyone talking about this? And really just like finding your crew, finding your own group of people that you can go into these kinds of discussions and I think partially maybe this is kind of a Buddhism thing, but like partially just kind of accepting where people are at on all levels and not really feeling the need to like push or pull anyone else in any direction can also be a valuable kind of component of exploring this stuff.
Sure. Neil, how about you?
Well, I'm sure Gary could tell you, but he and I took a philosophy class together in college, and it did not go well for me because I had like a fundamental problem with the professor. But I do think if things like philosophy were more openly discussed in public with your friends, with strangers, I think I probably would have taken to it a little more than I did. As it is, I have kind of a limited knowledge as far as like philosophy and things like that. So I definitely would be open to getting it from other people's perspectives than perhaps one teacher I didn't really get along with.
Sure. Yeah,
that was such a funny class. I love that.
Do you guys ACC? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Neil, I'm right there. I'm right there with you, man. I mean, outside of the philosophy classes that I took in college, it's just not really something that I've ever really dug into, with the exception of preparation for this episode. It's just it's not, and even those types of movies and stuff. I mean, hell, Ian, you and I talk about this all the time and stuff. I mean, a lot of times, a lot of art house films that are surrealist are also have a lot of different existential themes to them. And although I appreciate and do enjoy some of those movies, they are not typically the films that I like watching. I typically, I'm going to prefer a stronger script or something that's based off of a historical event or something like that. So yeah, Neil, I'd have to agree with you on that one. Sorry, go ahead. Who was trying to say something?
But Jonny, like the Lord of the Rings, for example, you like that movie, right?
Oh, I love Lord of the Rings. You know that.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, that's riddled with
right. That's ancillary themes. That's like secondary things. I was more referring to the
okay.
Correct. Yes, the primary main focus on that. The concept itself is built around the theory of existentialism.
It's hard to say, because like you almost could argue that the Lord of the Rings is built on that, because I mean, one ring to rule them all. That's the whole. That's like the whole overarching story. It's just hidden underneath a lot of other character development and what they're doing and learning.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I think that fundamentally, a lot of these discussions are present in the great works of art, even if they're not at the forefront.
Sure. And I think and that's very true, and that's actually going to be a good segue into the next question. I think in general, just to go back to what Neil was stating, I 100% concur with that. I feel that if more people were talking about different forms of philosophy, and they were pondering the existence of not only themselves, but the existence of everybody else in the world on the opposite side of the globe, thinking about how different their upbringing was, as opposed to this guy over in Ghana, or this dude in New Zealand. I just feel like we'd be able to, as a society, we'd be able to open up how we look at the world, open up our own opinions, open up just the very essence of who we are as humans, and almost being less of an echo chamber. I mean, we all grow up in, most people, at least I'd say the majority of us, we grow up in a culture or a society where the people around us, for the most part, all have the same mindset, or bits and pieces of those mindsets are shared. And I feel if we talked about these different forms, it would just make us more open to new forms of thinking. So yeah, I definitely think it would be very important. Ian, I'm sorry I didn't go with you. What do you think? Do you think this is important for us to be more well-rounded beings and appreciate our existence?
Well, I mean,
yeah. Short and sweet. I love it.
I mean, to an extent, really. I mean, you don't want to go too far on it, which will like kind of drive yourself crazy. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, be open-minded and learn from others.
Exactly. So now transitioning into the portion of this episode where we connect the philosophy to film. Why is it important to base films around existentialism, or at least other theories of philosophy, even if it's not necessarily the primary focus? Why is it important to have it as a secondary focus? Bob, we'll go ahead and start with you. I just want to on that.
I really agree with Gary about what he was saying about how narrative is the best narratives are cloaking these kinds of themes. I can't remember the quote exactly, but it's from Tolstoy, where he says something like, he's basically using novels to explain the human story, what the trials and tribulations of what every person goes through. And what he was really trying to do, and the great writers and great artists are trying to do, is give a perspective. Like in Anna Karenina, for example, the husband who's like portrayed as evil, he's controlling. And if there's any Russian novelist critics here, please correct me, but the kind of the antagonist in Anna Karenina, there's a moment where when he sees his child, he has this kind of redemptive like experience, and you can relate to him despite hating him for the last 10 chapters or whatever. What Tolstoy's trying to do is like paint this extremely rich landscape of showing everyone's perspective, like showing why it makes sense why people are behaving in a certain way because they had a certain past, because they were treated a certain way by someone else. So he's painting these like tapestries of intersecting experiences, and I think that's what great art does. I think Lord of the Rings is a great example. Everything Tolkien did basically is like trying to kind of inspire courage and inspire controlling your own fate and all those things. So here I'm just gonna kind of reiterate what Gary's saying tonight. Probably
then you'll always be right.
Exactly.
Gary's the genius of the group, apparently. If only you really knew him. No. Just kidding, Gary. I love you. So we'll transition over to Gary. Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, kind of, it's so important, I think, to have those themes, because, like, if you weave them in well, they can be underlying and not even seen, but they're so profound to, talk about, like, what is destiny, like Star Wars, Anakin Skywalker, like, it was his destiny to do something, and destiny, is that something he could fight against, or is that something that had to happen ultimately? And like, those are, I think, ideas and philosophies that sort of strike a nerve with people, because even if you don't realize the philosophy in your conscious mind, your brain gets it, and that reverberates with you. It's like how archetypes of, like, the villain twirling a mustache, everybody gets that, and it helps to just cement in. Just cement in what's going on, because it so well, because it's just so culturally embedded, even if you don't realize it. Like Romeo and Juliet, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. Is it fated? Or do they have a choice in that? Like, so I think that it's important to have in a succinct script, and it makes analyzing a movie or a book so much more intriguing. Like, you could take The Cat in the Hat and really delve into what is The Cat in the Hat all about. It's about dictatorship. So, it just it makes life a lot more richer to kind of look at.
Sure.
That's a whole nother episode.
That's a whole other.
It does seem like a whole nother episode, but I'm glad that we're picking at the scab right now. Ian, how about you? Where are you at with that?
These are some good points I didn't really think too much about. I at first was thinking, is it really necessarily important? I didn't really think so until these points got brought up. I always thought it was just a good, interesting topic that anybody could really relate to. And so it's definitely something that's on, for the most part, everybody's minds. Anybody who's a deep thinker, at least. And so, yeah, in that way, yeah, it's definitely good for entertainment and thought-provoking. But, yeah, I guess, yeah, I mean, like I said, those are some good points. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, it's funny. The more and more that we're talking about it, it almost seems like, to an extent, even to a very small degree, almost all movies have some form of existentialism in them. It just, I mean, if it's just the all-encompassing theory of existence and the fact that we are in control, like our own willpower controls our destiny. We're not preordained to have a specific job to do. I mean, that really goes for most movies. It may not be that central theme, but it may be a very, very small add to it. But so, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't necessarily know if it's important, or I don't know if it's imperative. I will say I don't know if it's imperative to have that in every script. I mean, there's certainly some that come across that don't need to have that. That's for sure.
Well, maybe we could say that like they are in like some philosophy or other will be in every script.
Every script, yeah, I would say 100%.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
It's incumbent upon the writer of that script to realize that philosophy and know how to weave it in. Otherwise, it'll just be a little ham-handed. So if you look at the Matrix franchise,
I was going to say that.
Go ahead, take it away.
It's definitely the
Except
big
for
one.
this little film called The Matrix.
Yeah.
Of which we just saw recently did an episode on.
We did just do a
Have a
2-hour
crazy day. Okay, awesome.
But yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, Gary, please keep going.
No, I was just saying, like, it could be, you know, ham-handed, like a lot of people at the end when there's a very obvious sort of Jesus reference with Neo,
Right.
before
As
he
the
gets
savior,
resurrected.
Right.
You know, it can be a little, it can turn people off. Or if you have, you know, like, what was that, Superman Returns? Which was the one where he was in, the Zack Snyder one, where he was in space and he was dead.
Superman Returns.
Yeah.
No, Man of Steel. Man of Steel is what you're thinking of. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And
Yeah, the Kevin Costner one.
yeah. Oh God, I'm not going to get started on that one. Go to somebody else. I'm done here.
You don't get what you don't. Come on, let's get meta. No, you don't want to talk about Zack Snyder for 2 hours, Gary?
Oh no,
Come on.
no,
we can do it.
No.
I know Johnny wants to.
Oh, I would have more than a few things to say about Zack Snyder.
In a 4:3 aspect ratio.
It's hurting my eyes. God, Jesus.
Well, and Gary, you mentioned Star Wars earlier. I mean, I think sci-fi is like probably one of the best genres that includes the philosophical kind of underpinnings in a way that's palatable for people, because it's so
and
the new environment, the new technology, the new society. It's like
and like
it's such a afterthought.
Yeah, like the easiest would of course be to go to the show. Neil, I know you know what I'm going to say. What show?
I don't know.
Star Trek.
I was gonna. Okay, I was gonna say Friends, but all right.
Star Trek is the original series, and by and large, almost most of the Next Generation, and I guess Voyager and Deep Space Nine as well. Like there is so much about philosophy just deeply ingrained in that show, and you don't even like realize it. Like because when just as Bob was saying, like because you get to go to a new planet and get put in a entirely new situation, and therefore they each become little morality plays about underlying philosophies. Like, you know, like there was an episode of The Next Generation where this guy was turning 60, and then so he was going to commit suicide because that was the tradition on this planet, and they were saying, why are you going to do that? And then, you know, can we go in and mess with the planet or, you know, mess with the culture of these people because we don't believe it's right? And, you know, then I could go on with Star Trek for a long time, but Star Trek is a great example of really skillfully weaving that in, I think, especially because it's built to a younger audience. So even though they may not be hearing the words of, you know, Thomas Aquinas, Immanuel Kant, or any of these people, like their ideas are being presented to them.
Right. Okay. So with all of this, I mean, just in the span of the last 30 to 45 minutes that we've been recording this, you know, one topic of philosophy has already gotten us to go off on tangents to, you know, many of the most popular franchises to ever be created by Hollywood. You know, so here's the question: why is existentialism or existential films, why are they not nearly as popular as other movie themes, as movies on isolation and depression or war or, you know, the buddy cop genre, stuff like that? You know, I mean, it's obviously there. I'm not saying it's not there, and I'm not saying that, you know, there aren't popular art house films or indies that have made their rounds through the Hollywood circuit that or the festival circuit that a lot of people haven't seen. But until recently, really over the last 20 years or so, we definitely don't see them as major Hollywood blockbusters. Why do we feel that they're not as popular? Neil, I want to start with you on this one. Why do you feel that they're not as mainstream?
Well, as you said earlier, I think a lot of movies have existentialism in them as not necessarily the main point of the film. I think films that are made specifically to point out or to show existentialism have a problem, because I think most people go to the movies to be entertained by a story and not want to have to think about what someone else is going through.
Ponder their existence. Yeah. think about it. Think about existence. Think about death. Think about the dark abyss and nothingness. Yeah. It's not, when you get down to it, it can be a little, I don't know. Ian, earlier you were like, yeah, you don't want to ponder it too much, because it can make you a little pessimistic. It's just kind of like,
at the least,
is it? Yeah, exactly. Is everything that we're doing really worth doing it? So Ian, what about you? Why do you think that a lot of these existential films are not nearly as popular?
It's a lot to think about. It's a lot on your plate, and people don't want to think about that, especially say you've been working at this dead end job all week. It's finally the weekend. You just got paid, and you just have enough money to just take the wife and the kids to go see a movie. You don't want to see something that's all that make you wonder why you even exist in the first place. And, you want something lighthearted and fun.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not speaking me. I mean, I'm all about that. But
I know you are, buddy.
General audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, Ian, that there's like an escapism quality, right, to film, and kind of stepping outside of your own experience. And I think there is like a more dastardly reason, which is like I was going to mention, maybe I'll save some of these for if I come back and do a documentary episode. But there's a really good documentary series called The Century of Self, by Adam Curtis, who's a British filmmaker, and he talks about basically in the 20th century kind of Freud and Jungian psychoanalysis not only did it like affect how we think of the mind, but it also crept into basically kind of psychological techniques in terms of, like, for example, public relations, and like creating consumerism and like commodification, and like just making people happy buyers and just buying the products, and like a real like kind of complacency aspect to large media arms in terms of like from a sociological standpoint. So I think it is related to what Ian was saying, and I think it's kind of secondarily like I think there are actual like kind of consumerism motives. Not to be too like radical left over here, but it is what it is.
And back to the escapism, if you notice that the existential films that are more popular that people do want to see, the big blockbusters, are the existential escapist movies like The Matrix. Right. Something like
Star Wars,
yeah, something that'll make you think, like maybe there is something outside of this, and how cool is that?
Yeah. Gary, how about you? Why do you think they're not as popular?
Sometimes people just want to watch a popcorn movie. Like Commando, as I've said before. And,
yes.
It's not always easy to kind of, delve deep into a really thick concept. So there was this movie that Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt did called 13 Monkeys, 12 Monkeys?
Oh, 12 Monkeys.
12 Monkeys, yeah.
12.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
1 dozen monkeys with Brad Pitt.
Baker's dozen.
Yeah, and so that movie was, had a lot of, themes of like existence and fate really featured in them. Like, because he was supposed to, there was like a virus that was released on the world. Something like, or is this real?
We actually watched it during when pandemic was first starting. Yeah, we had a LeadFeather retreat and watched that, and that was not the best idea.
Yeah,
probably.
I brought that one up on the time travel episode.
Yeah, so like basically he's able to travel through time, and he tries to go back and like stop it. I don't want to spoil it, but like it's about can you change things that are happening, or do you become your own causality of them? Anyway, so
it's damn it, I forgot what it's called. It's damn it. My bad. I'm sorry. I'm fucking.
Why, God? Why?
Look, we just want to eat the popcorn. We want to watch the good guys beat the bad guys, and watch the guy kiss the pretty girl, and head home.
It's interesting
to beat traffic.
Bruce Willis did the movie Looper later, so I mean, maybe he's really into this kind of stuff. I don't know.
He might be, and he did The Kid. You know.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's 3 movies.
But still, did. Like those are
awesome.
They all have themes of it.
I remember the term now. Sorry, it's predestination, and that's what 12 Monkeys is all about. Is predestination.
Right. Yeah.
Final destination. The whole series.
A lot of Terry Gilliam films focus around that. That's for sure. They definitely revolve around a lot of those plots. And I mean, yeah, I completely agree with you guys. It's one of those things where it's at least for me. You know, film has always been an escape from reality for me, to the point where it relaxes me. You know, I certainly enjoy watching a psych thriller that'll make me think and ponder my daily routine, or, you know, ponder other things that I'm not accustomed to in my daily rituals and such. But it's just, honestly, going to the movies is just like, it's just like having a drink, or, you know, or smoking bud, or going to work out, or having sex. You know, it's a release. You know, we all go through our entire day and we're stressed out to the nines when we come home, and we need a way to relax and to release. Yeah. So yeah, no, Ian, you're right. You know, we've been saying that on this show for a long time. You know, film is escapism. That's why it's so popular. That's why people love it. You know, that's why there's such resistance for, you know, movie theaters to be torn down, because at that point you can obviously binge whatever you want at home, but, you know, you go into the theater, and not only is it escapism, but it's also an event. At this point, it becomes an outing where you get to actually connect with other people in the theater, and, you know, you see their expressions and reactions to things that happen on screen, and then you get to react with them.
We hope that you are enjoying this rousing episode of LeadFeather Productions' I Don't Give a Flick. To help us bring you more of the content that you love, please consider following us on Patreon at patreon.com/LeadFeather. There are 3 tiers to choose from, with special and exclusive merchandise in our VIP level. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming.
So moving forward from there, you know, earlier we touched on, is existentialism a primary theme for films, or merely an ancillary one used to push another agenda or topic? So basically, I was asking.
Can I pop in a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This is like kind of to our guests, Bob and Ian. I'm not as well versed in existentialism as I am in other things, but doesn't existentialism, easy for you to say, have aspects of like being like before your form, like there, before you take shape on this earth, there's like a bit of you, and then like once you come into this earth, there's like that like gives you your true essence or something like that. It's been a while since I've been in an existentialism class.
It can.
I remember like they like Kierkegaard and them, they disagreed with Aristotle and Aquinas, those philosophies on that. So am I misremembering this? Should I just edit this whole part out? I don't want to look stupid.
Too late.
I don't have enough knowledge on that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that aspect of it. I mean, I think, like, you know, to your point earlier, like around fate and you know, kind of creating your own destiny, I think is like the main part of it. Kind of my purpose, why do I exist? Now I'm going to check with the internet here. But yeah, I mean, it's primarily based around our own, the individual. You know, it's not about the gods or the governments or any kind of authoritative figure or any cultural rigidity. It's you know, we're responsible for ourselves, and that's a valuable school of thought. You know, I think that's why it's still just as popular as it was a few centuries ago.
There's also, let's not forget 2 other schools of thought: nihilism, which is very close to it. So like existentialism is the like, I guess, why are we here? What is our purpose? And nihilism is there is none. It's just shut down.
There's no point. Yeah.
There's no point. Don't even ask.
It's meaningless.
Yeah, exactly. And then the third one, which is my favorite, is absurdism, which is basically just like life is absurd, that we'll never understand why it exists, but you know, pretty much make your own meaning to it, and just, you know, just live with that. And so I think that a lot of films that we're going to talk about, the reason why I'm bringing this up is a lot of them will say is existentialism, but I think a few of them might fall into the nihilism and absurdism thread. So I think that would be interesting conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good. I love that when we're able to break off into tangents and little side convos. So back to what I was asking originally before Gary rudely interrupted me.
Yes.
Just kidding, Gary. You know I love you. Don't tell anybody though. I like you better than Neil. Don't let him know. Shh. Oh God, he's back. Okay, so the question is existentialism, is it a primary theme typically in a lot of the films that we're going to mention, or the films that we've been looking at that we made our lists of, you know, or is it an ancillary one used to push another agenda? You know, can the topic itself carry an entire film? I know that a lot of, and we'll get obviously into blockbusters and more mainstream films, obviously a lot of those ones don't have that as the main theme in the script, but a lot of the art house ones that I'm sure, you know, Ian and Bob are going to go into here in our next section, a lot of those ones do. So Ian, I'm going to throw this one to you first. Do you think that the films that come out that are part of the art house sector or the indie sector, do you think they hold up to just a regular, normal, popular movie that might make, you know, billions of dollars at the box office?
What do you mean? Do they hold up?
Do you think they're as good a quality of a movie as? Yeah.
Well, I mean, sometimes, not always. Sometimes even more so. It really depends on the movie itself. Some of them can be hard to watch. Some of them aren't for everybody. I mean, you definitely, like you and me personally, have talked about many films that I like that you didn't, or you like that I didn't. But yeah, it really depends on who made them and the quality.
Yeah. So let me ask you, because you love these types of films. You know, I mean, you always talk about how much you love surrealist films in general, but you love these types of films. Why do you love them so much? Why do you like them more than just going and watching the newest whatever came out?
It's such a not an easy question. I mean, again, it depends on the movie. So some of them I like the visual aesthetics. Some of them I like the. I mean, I'll bring up one that I plan on bringing up anyway, and I've already talked about it on the show. Holy Mountain by Alejandro Jodorowsky. I like that. That's one of my favorite films of all time, and that's definitely not for everybody, all audiences. Why I like it more than others is because, I mean, it's visually fantastic for one. For two, it questions religion. Bob, have you seen Holy Mountain?
Yeah, Jodorowsky.
Yeah. Yeah, because you were talking about religion earlier, so I was already talking about this, but you made me think about it earlier when you were talking about that. Is how it brings up religious and sacrilegious themes together in one film, and it really says things about the Catholic Church that is very controversial, that nobody, especially in the early 70s, would ever dream to say. And it shows a lot of things, and it's very thought provoking. And after you finish watching it, it'll put ideas in your head and images in your head and metaphors and make you think for days or months or even years after, and it'll make you, it's almost like a life-changing experience. Not just that movie, but many others like it.
Okay.
Totally. Yeah, he's a basic woman. Jodorowsky, the director, he's like really into kind of psychedelic, mystical philosophy. So yeah, huge fan of him.
And that's a very existential film as well.
Totally.
So since we're already on the subject, I would like to go ahead and jump ahead really quick. We can retrace our steps later. But with Jodorowsky and other films, Lynch and other directors and films like that, let's go into that. Again, you guys give us a couple of your favorite films that fit this description. We talked about we mentioned why are a lot of these types of films not as popular. Obviously, sometimes to the average moviegoer, they might be a tad slow or boring. They're just not as exciting kind of thing because there's less dialogue that people not necessarily understand, but they have to think harder to fully comprehend what's being said. So Ian, let's start with you here. What are a couple you would kind of go off on your list to give to our audience to maybe take a look at?
Yeah, well, another Jodorowsky film that you've seen is El Topo.
Yep.
So
surprised me how much I actually liked it more than I thought I was going to.
Yeah, but that right there is what you just described. It's very slow paced. Some people. First time I saw it, I was 15, and I was bored. So bored by it, but it was also very thought provoking, and like it made me think about it for years later. I hadn't seen it again for probably about 4 or 5 years, and I just it just stayed in my mind, and even though I didn't like it the first time, it intrigued me so much that I wanted to see it again, and then I did enjoy it. Now I love it, and it's still not like a movie I can see over and over again. It's a very it's like once every few years kind of watch because it's so just out there. So yeah, that's one, El Topo. That's a story of basically a gunslinger in the Old West. So it's like his Alejandro Jodorowsky's his take on a spaghetti western, and he's a gunslinger, and he's trying to basically become the greatest warrior. So he goes up against all the other greatest warriors in the desert, and he takes he pretty much steals their power from them to use up against them, their techniques, and
so it's Highlander.
There can only be one.
Actually, no. That's a joke, but that's pretty much on the nose. And then later he just kind of becomes Jesus. Yeah. So that's a fun one. I'm also not selling it at the same time because I'm saying it's really slow and boring, but it's definitely fantastic. You have to be in the right state of mind for it, but if you are, it's incredible.
Yeah, probably not a movie.
Yeah,
go ahead, Bob.
I wasn't gonna advocate using cannabis necessarily.
It's probably helpful.
No,
might be
advocate what you want.
Might be interesting to combine those two.
Yeah.
Those are great recs, Ian.
Yeah. So let me ask, just this wasn't on the list, but I am just curious. For films like this, does it help and even make it more enjoyable to be stoned when you watch it?
I personally, I stopped smoking a while ago, so
Okay.
I would say, yeah, probably.
I smoke way less. Yeah, I smoke way less than I did in film school.
Sure.
But I mean, maybe we'll come back and do an intoxication episode. But
where I'll just get real fucked up.
I mean, the thing about psychoactive chemicals, right, is that it breaks you off of your kind of what's the word, default mode network. So that's what these films are doing. It's exploring kind of other philosophies and other realities, and so the psychoactive chemical does to your neurons. So anyway, I feel like I'm the drug guy now, but
yoga and the drugs.
Not my
What's happening,
intention.
Bob?
I mean, I'm all about it. The only reason why I don't smoke is because it gives me anxiety, which unlike everybody else in the world. But I think that it'd probably be very helpful for a lot of people. I mean, some people would not watch this because they're not stoned or something. But yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so would
not for everybody.
Yeah. What? So is there so since I guess we were mentioning the average moviegoer or the majority of people will not watch films like this because normally, for the most part, they're probably going to be sober, and it is slower and a little more drawn out. Maybe to some people, a little more boring. Are there any that fit this description? And I mean, hell, Ian, if El Topo fits the description, throw it out. Are there any that fit the description that you might recommend to people to kind of, it's a good segue for them into this type of movie? Like, would El Topo fit that bill, or is something else?
No, that's the deep end. Like you got to swim before you have to. Yeah. Put your floats on before you jump.
You got to float before you can swim. Sure. I gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Definitely none by that director. David Lynch, I would probably say he's also deep in, but I would say, but what's it called?
Sorry.
Blue Velvet would probably kind of be up in there. That's a good question. Maybe Bob, if you want to take that while I think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would come back to sci-fi. I think sci-fi is probably the best genre in terms of kind of box office accessibility that is exploring these kinds of topics. Ian mentioned Jodorowsky. I think for me, at least from an artist standpoint, Philip K. Dick, somebody who's in that same kind of pantheon of existentialist and psychedelic and kind of transcendental artists. Blade Runner is a movie based on.
It's a good one.
It's also a difficult one, though. Kind of a hard one.
It is. I mean, I think playing around with AI is definitely not uncommon these days, and can definitely sell some tickets to movie theaters for sure. And a lot of those kind of implications around the responsibility and the kind of the responsible innovation of AI and kind of what it can do. And I mean, The Matrix too. Come back to The Matrix. I mean, about
that's definitely the door opener right there.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, it certainly, it seems like that would be one that would ease. Yeah, the Wachowskis. Yeah, it would certainly ease people into it for sure. Not just throwing them into the deep end and being like, learn how to swim quick.
I would say Scanner Darkly, another Philip K. Dick.
That's a good
that has been turned to film.
Yeah, another Linklater.
Yeah, and pretty much anything by Richard Linklater.
Yeah. I mean, hell, man. Even it's funny to think about. Even something like School of Rock to a little more a little more mainstream one that even still has a lot of hints of it.
I was gonna say maybe something like Waking Life or Boyhood or
even Dazed and Confused to an extent. Still has a lot of that. It looks into it. It looks into it.
Yeah, Pink is trying to just figure out where he fits into life. Shitty.
Yeah.
Go against his code and pretty much agree not to do drugs and still do drugs anyway, or should he just do something else, and he doesn't know what he wants to do.
Yeah, yeah. It really is a shame to me that Hollywood, not as much as they used to, but for a very long time, obviously the rise of the independent production companies, as we've talked about in many other episodes, is at the forefront right now, and it's getting big. And the movement is, with all the streaming services, the movement is just getting stronger. But Hollywood, for such a long time, obviously had such, the 4 or 5 major production studios had such a stranglehold on the type of movies that the public could see. I mean, really up until, oh God, I mean, the late 2000s, early 2010s, we saw the 10 movies that were out a week. That was it. That's what you had access to. You couldn't go online and look up, 5 movies by this guy, or 2 movies by Jodorowsky that you'd never heard of before, or Lynch, or whoever. It wasn't an option. So I wonder where we'll be at moving forward within the next 10 to 20 years. Are existential films going to start taking a leap, and are we going to start seeing more of them being in the mainstream? Are we going to see more of them getting nominated at the Golden Globes and the Oscars? Are we going to see one that like breaks the record for highest grossing opening weekend in cinema history? I know that we're starting to see it more and more with most Chris Nolan and Coen Brothers films. But it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to go within the next decade or so. So Bob, are there any that you would recommend to us moving forward that most people probably haven't heard of? Are there any that any I don't know, any foreign films that fit this description, or anything that you've personally really loved that you've seen over the last couple of years you'd recommend to our viewers?
Yeah, I was thinking about some sci-fis that are really cool that or maybe less popular. I really liked Ex Machina.
Yeah.
2014. A few years ago, Oscar Isaac, pretty much anything Oscar Isaac does, I'll watch. But
don't get me started.
He's the best.
Yeah.
but he's a great megalomaniac. Yeah, megalomaniacal. He's like a Elon Musk kind of guy, in that movie. And he's like, let me see here. 2014 science fiction film, a programmer who was invited by his CEO to administer the Turing test to an intelligent humanoid robot. Mm-hmm. Turing test being this kind of super good movie, worth a rewatch. Honestly, we watched it recently.
It should be on Hulu right now. I think I saw that the other day when I was flipping through. So
nice.
Anybody wants to check it out?
Questioning to be relevant to the topic about questioning what is human. How do we determine our humanity? And
absolutely,
those kinds of themes are really, really great.
I mean, it's I really think it's certainly important, for just to go back to what we talked about earlier, for people to open up your mind, open up your eyes to other ways of thinking, other ways of viewing the world, and to really discover yourself. We're kind of, I talked about echo chambers earlier, but we're just kind of trapped in our daily routines and our day-to-day lives. We don't really give ourselves the opportunity as a society to go out and grow in this aspect, even though we're definitely, with the internet and with the freedom of speech that we currently have, at least in this country, the ability to be able to speak and to give people these thoughts they may not think of themselves. So in the last 20 or 30 years, we were talking about, we've begun to see more of the existential films hitting theaters, staying in the mainstream. Let's jump in. Gary, I want to go to you. What are some of the more well-known films that fit the description, and give us kind of your breakdown of what you think of them? Some that are existential films. Not that it's the primary focus, but it's one of the big themes that they're focusing on for movies that have hit theaters over the last 2 or 3 decades.
Okay, so like, what about Bob? No, Groundhog Day is what I mentioned. Right? I was looking at Bob. That's so Groundhog Day is the story of
different Bill Murray.
Yeah. It's a story of a guy who he's not a very good person, and so he gets stuck in like a time loop in this little town of Punxsutawney, and has to repeat the same day over and over again for unknown millennia, possibly even longer. Until he can figure out, how to be a better person. And that it's a comedy. And it's probably one of Bill Murray's best movies. I may have that as his.
Yeah, I love that movie.
That's my number one for him. But
same here.
I'd probably give him Ghostbusters because I like that movie. But Groundhog Day's I think his best performance. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, can you think of one that almost fits more of a summer blockbuster, something that's been more recent? I know we had kind of mentioned, y'all briefly talked about, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and Star Trek kind of falling into that. But is there another one that's even maybe a little newer that you can think of that you might throw in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you could. Did the Marvel movies, do they come out in summer or is that winter?
Yeah, most of them came out in they'd be June to August.
Okay, well, like Endgame, basically they go back and they try and change, which is the biggest movie ever. Everybody saw it, so everybody's familiar with it. I don't have to worry about spoiling anything.
That's true. Oh, name one time we've cared about spoilers on this show, Gary. Name one monkeys. Time we've ever cared. 12 Monkeys. That's the one. The one exception. The one exception.
Even though I already spoiled that one in an earlier episode.
Yeah.
Ian's spoiling Jodorowsky. That's a new level.
He is, man.
I'm helping the viewers understand those.
Helping interpret. Great distinction.
Exactly, because it's not about necessarily spoiling the end of the movie with an existential film like that, but like Endgame, hugely popular. They go back, they try and change the events of the past, and in Endgame, they are able to make changes to what the ultimate future is like. So I mean, that was a popular movie, I would say.
Yeah, I would just to continue on that trend. Nowadays, especially, you always hear about the existential hero, and I think The Dark Knight perfectly encompasses that. I think it's the story. It's the point to where Batman, at least to this point in his journey, Bruce Wayne has never met a foe as formidable or as fucking nuts as the Joker, and he has to decide: is he going to go into the night and let Harvey Dent take over, or is he going to keep the same job and role that the city needs him to have and continue on? So he comes to a crossroads multiple times in the film where he needs to decide who he's going to be, and his destiny isn't preordained or anything. So I think a lot of Nolan films actually do fall into that.
I was going to say Inception, so we're on the same vibe, man.
There you go. That's right. So yeah, Bob, go ahead. So you said Inception?
Yeah, no, I mean, Christopher Nolan, the Batman series is so good. But yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah, Inception is about people sharing a dream space and kind of accessing your subconscious mind. Can that be used? Can that be abused? And so the film's plot takes place across these kind of interconnected dream worlds between the characters, where the actions in one kind of make you question which plane of reality they're taking place in. So yeah, definitely works with these themes, and he does that really, really well. And he does the blockbuster philosophical stuff as good as anybody. Probably.
Oh yeah, there may not be anybody better than him at doing it. Gary,
he did Interstellar, right? That was probably the most.
Yeah, he did.
Esoteric of his movies, I would say. Except for maybe Tenet. I couldn't hear the first half of it, but don't. Okay.
I still haven't seen it yet. I need to watch that immediately.
Fire the audio mixer. Whoever his audio mixer.
Oh, really?
I won't get into. Sorry. I know Ian, Gary, and Neil are probably just tired of hearing about it. No, the problem with it, Bob, I guess you haven't seen it. A lot of the Foley and any of the background noise and even the soundtrack itself, whenever it was playing, was so loud you couldn't hear the dialogue, and they didn't have any closed caption on. So when Gary and I saw it, Gary, we 50% of the movie we probably heard.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, and with especially a movie like that, you really need to make sure the dialogue is getting out. Unless you have to...
it's already so convoluted as it is. You have to hear what's going on. You have to because every word of every sentence is important because it's a confusing plot line, and you really need to pay close attention to follow along.
Well, and speaking of theaters and what you were talking about earlier about kind of people protesting the closing of movie theaters, like Christopher Nolan is like the biggest movie theater fan guy. He's just like, please see this in the movies and the IMAX, and he it's almost like a sacred kind of space for him, and I imagine for a lot of directors, but I've just read him.
Denis Villeneuve has been really vocal on that.
He has, yeah. I mean, we bring up both of those directors, and those are the types of directors, and James Cameron too, people like that. They make movies that are made for a large screen. Like you can't I don't feel personally that you can fully appreciate a lot of those scenes or just a lot of the cinematography without seeing it on a giant screen. It doesn't have to be an IMAX, but definitely it's not the same with seeing it on your laptop or your 60-inch at home,
Yeah, Denis Villeneuve said that seeing Dune on a small screen is like riding what do you say, like a speedboat in your bathtub.
It's an insult. I mean, that movie was so damn majestic. It was so wonderfully done. And you can't. And you and I both agreed on this, Ian. We've talked about it a million times. We both saw it multiple times in theaters. It's just so beautiful. It's an experience. You don't see it very often. I talked with a lot of people who watched it on HBO Max, and they're like, "Oh, it was okay," and I would be like, "No. Go see it in theaters and then let me know what you think." And I'd say the majority of them, they came back and they're like, "Oh yeah, I liked it more," or some of them said I liked it. Some of them still didn't. Their mind wasn't changed. But
it's a great point, and that I think that probably does pertain even to your topic around existentialism and like deeper thinking films, like the actual environment that you're watching them in. If you're watching it on a TV in your bed or even like at a party, sometimes like you can't have Ex Machina on, when like 10 people are hanging out drinking. You can't, or Jodorowsky.
I want to watch something else.
Yeah, you got to put on Hot Tub Time Machine for
That's
that.
Right. Good pick.
So,
Neil, what about
going to the IMAX alone is the way to do it, I guess.
Yeah. Neil, what about you? What large summer blockbuster do you think kind of fits that description that's an existential film over the last 20 years?
Well, I think one of them has to be Toy Story. The fact that a toy doesn't realize that he's just a toy, and the discovery that he goes through, and the self-realization that he has to suffer through.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's a. I was going to say
at the end though realize he is a hero though. Isn't that the whole point?
Yeah, but it took him a while to figure it out.
He literally goes through an existential crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. He shuts down. He's like doesn't believe it, and he's got to learn how to adapt in this new life.
I was going to say that's a reach, Neil, but it's not a reach at all.
Yeah,
that's right on the nose.
Excellent choice, Neil.
That's a really good one, actually. I just wouldn't have thought of that at all. Yeah. So as far as the worst existential films of all time, I want to hear everybody's thoughts on this one. Just the ones that maybe they mean well, they try their hardest to hit it home, but it just doesn't work. Just doesn't work at all. Which you guys, what do you think are some of the worst, or the very worst in general? Gary, let's go to you. What do you think is a poor attempt at an existential film, or just a bad existential film in general?
I'm not going to say it's a bad film, but I do find it to be a boring film.
Mm-hmm.
It's Kubrick's 2001 Space Odyssey.
Fuck you, Gary. Fuck you, Gary.
Yeah, fuck you.
No, I meant to say a different movie.
Yep. Hang on, wait, stop for 2 seconds. I want to interject. They're Ian saying fuck you, Neil saying fuck you, but they're for two different reasons. Neil, your reason, I'm assuming, is that was your pick.
Correct, because it's such a slow and boring movie, and I fucking hate that movie so much.
And Ian is saying it because this is one of Ian's favorite films, if not his favorite film.
It is my favorite of all.
Okay, I just so everybody knew, I just thought that was so funny as hell. Gary, keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, my original idea on this terrible film is 2001: A Space Odyssey. No, it's like
sacrilege.
It's really a well-made film. I'm not saying that. It's shot beautifully, it's directed beautifully, it's acted well, and the sound is great on. It's an amazing movie. So I'm not saying it's a bad movie at all. For me, it's a slow movie. Is all that I'm saying. But I do recognize that there are so many monumental filming elements in it. So it's a great movie, but it's a slow movie, and I think it's kind of a boring movie.
I would actually recommend reading the book, and especially in the question of existentialism, it's definitely easier, and you might enjoy it better. The book is fantastic.
All right, Ian, over to you then. What do you think What do you think's one of the worst, or a bad one? Doesn't have to be the worst.
Endgame.
Take that, Gary.
And actually, that is like a shot back. Actually, I kind of do feel that. I didn't enjoy that one. There's a lot. There's a shit ton of plot holes.
I mean, you try cramming, 20 some odd movies into one final resolution film.
No, the whole going back in time and then taking things back to the present that hasn't been altered in any way, and then Thanos somehow catches up to them in the present. They took care of present Thanos. They knocked him out. Then they went into the past and fucked over past Thanos, and then somehow past Thanos is fighting present time Avengers. I had a lot of problems with that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Bob, what about you? What falls into this?
I don't really have worst movies. I mean,
sure.
I don't know. I like a lot of movies. I mean, in terms of being, it's good. This is I'm not the right person maybe for a film podcast about talking about the worst movies necessarily, but
that's good.
Nope. I really like Space Odyssey. It's really great. It is slow. And about the ending for months. The one thing I will say though about 2001 is the hype is so high. I've had heard about it for years. I am actually pretty late to it. I saw it 4 or 5 years ago, but I had heard about it for 10, 15 years, and people were like, "You haven't seen 2001?" And I finally had to go watch it at Alamo, and it was amazing. But it was the hype was so high that just go in without any expectations would be my recommendation there. But the ending is amazing. Even some of the Avengers stuff. This is not really the question, but the other end of the spectrum of hardcore experimental stuff like Kubrick and Jodorowsky. Those have benefit, but also the Avengers I really, this is not the question, but I really like Doctor Strange, for example.
Yeah.
I'm kind of not.
Another Kubrick
I haven't
film.
seen a lot of the. Yeah, right. I haven't seen a lot of the Marvel movies, admittedly, but I have seen a few of them, and pretty much the ones I've watched, I did enjoy. I really liked Benedict as Doctor Strange, and that's pretty existential, actually. In terms of tonight's topic, he's exploring these different realities. He's, there's an Eastern philosophy component because that's how he obtains his skill, and I don't know. I don't have an answer about worst, but I like kind of the whole sides of the spectrum, I guess.
Well, that's okay. You know, it's good. It's good to like a lot of them. It's better to like more than hate more. That's for sure. I'll give you that. I would have to say that, and the reason I thought about that, I had done a commercial recently where Terrence Malick was the director. So I was on set with a bunch of people, and I've never been a giant fan of his work. It's not that he's bad. It's just it's not really my taste. But Tree of Life was my first foray into anything that he did, and I can't tell you, I fell asleep in the theaters. First time I fell asleep, my friend, I was with Jessica, my friend Jessica Hale, and she woke me up, so I stayed awake for another 30 minutes, fell back asleep again, and then shook me
twice.
I did. But
That's a slow movie.
It is a slow movie, and here's the thing. And Ian, you can attest to this. Even if I don't like the movie initially, if somebody's like, you really should give it another chance, I will go and watch it again. I will be like, okay. I was like, I'll go ahead and give it a shot. And I did with Tree of Life. I went and saw it a second time. I went and saw it with my girlfriend at the time. And it wasn't even necessarily that it was slow. It was the fact that they spent 25 minutes, might have been a little less, but they spent 25 minutes with the Big Bang, essentially, and the creation of existence. And you basically just watch these small supernovas explode across the galaxy across the universe. And then you go to Earth and you see dinosaurs hunting and drinking water. And I get it. I understand the symbolism behind it. You know, that's fine. But it was just 30 minutes of the film that just seemed, I don't know, just wasted. No dialogue whatsoever. They weren't showing us any character arcs. They weren't showing us the improvement that the family was trying to make. And it shows the choices that were coming up. I don't know. It just
really reminds me of The Revenant.
It took a long time for that to happen in the world.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It only took 30 minutes in the movie, but it took like billions of years, Johnny.
That's true. That's a good point, Bob. It did. Certainly, though, when I go to the movies, though, I'm not looking to sit there for 2 hours and watch stars explode.
Cosmology.
Yeah, it's just maybe some people. For me, not necessarily.
I actually answer for
sure.
Movies I'm not that big a fan of, and this is going to upset Ian probably, but not a big David Lynch fan.
Ugh.
Which is like
such
a controversial.
I'm like 50-50 myself.
Preach, Bob Peck, preach.
He's very dark and he's very absurd, and I do like his absurd stuff, but the dark absurd just isn't for me. But I love that he's like the president of TM now, which is super interesting.
Is he?
He's an interesting guy. Yeah, he's a fascinating artist, but not a huge fan of his stuff. Yeah,
I like a couple of his films, but not all of them.
So controversial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Blue Velvet probably is best film.
I like Mulholland Drive a lot.
I was about to say Mulholland Drive was very well done. I'll give you that. But I was telling Ian the other day, I tried watching Eraserhead for it had to be at least the third or fourth time. It is a tough one. I went about 15 minutes in and I couldn't get into it. I just couldn't. I turned it off. It was too drawn out, man. It was just too slow. Not enough was happening. He takes so long to make a damn point, and it's just like, come on already, get to it. What am I sitting here? I don't want to sit here for an hour and a half wasting my time just trying to figure out
where are the good guys. When are they going to kill the bad guys? Just kidding.
Yeah, I'm not going to defend that. Like I said, I love Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet. The rest,
Mulholland Drive was good.
Yeah. Well, I actually did. I loved it.
And Elephant Man just kills himself.
Not 84 Ian. No, not 84 Dune. Not Sting in a codpiece, for God's sake. No, you son of a bitch. Son of a bitch.
Edgelord answer.
Yeah. Gary, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say Elephant Man when he just at the end decides to just lay down like a normal person and die.
Mm-hmm.
Was that David Lynch?
Yeah, that's his second film. Right after.
Spoiler alert.
There might have been a different Elephant Man.
No, it is. That's Lynch. Yeah, he that was his second film.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Neil, same question to you there. What do you think? What do you think is the worst outside of 2001: A Space Odyssey, or one of the worst?
I mean, outside of that, I'm also not a fan of Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange.
What?
Okay.
I like
Why's
Malcolm
that?
McDowell. I really like him, but I don't know. I watched it once when I was younger, and I was like, oh, this is just unnecessarily grotesque and violent. And then I watched it again. I was like, oh, nothing's changed. And I was like, okay, well, I've seen it twice now, and I'm good.
Hard to agree with that one too, Neil. It's like dark and absurd, like
unnecessarily.
Yeah, unnecessarily dark, violent.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
Well,
it's
the point of it, isn't
it's
it?
a commentary.
Yeah, definitely. Really, the message is totalitarian society.
I thought it was don't drink milk. Did I get that wrong?
Well, that
too. You're just a tad off. It's okay though. We won't talk about it. Don't worry about it.
All the problems started when they started drinking milk at that bar.
That's true. Also, I recommend the book on that. The Clockwork Orange book is also really good.
Yeah. Ooh. All right, guys. Well, unfortunately, we are running out of time here for tonight. We are currently getting pretty late, and I know that people gotta work in the morning. If for anybody listening, you know we're night owls, and we could talk a film, until our faces are blue and the sun comes up. But unfortunately, we're gonna have to start wrapping up. So Bob, since you've never been on the show before, what we do at the end of each episode is we give the panel an opportunity to recommend another film that they would have our audience go ahead and take a look at that week. So preferably one that kind of fits the topic for that episode, but even maybe there's something that you watched recently that you can't get out of your head and you got to recommend it to our viewers. So by all means, we'll give our guests a minute to think of theirs. Let's start with the panel. Neil, what are you going to recommend for everybody this week?
So sticking along the whole Disney, Pixar, my recommendation for an existential movie will be Inside Out. I recently watched that and I thought it was pretty good.
It is pretty good.
So I will recommend that one up on the big board.
The old big board. I didn't even know we had a big board. Okay.
Oh, we got a big board.
Oh, we got a big board. Gary, how about you? What are you recommending this week?
I'm going to recommend the 2020 Pixar movie. I think it's Pixar. Soul.
Pixar. Okay. Yeah, man.
Soul was also a very good one.
Soul was. Yeah.
Because it's about these souls in the before life or afterlife.
Spoiler alert.
Well, that's how it starts, isn't it?
It's before life.
Okay, and that's kind of why I was asking about existentialism having that before component earlier, because I was trying to think if this would work as a recommendation. But anyway, they're trying to prove worthy of who they are and what they can be.
Right.
And it's a fun children's animated film about death and dying and rebirth. Moving on.
No children's movie is complete without about death.
Yeah, look at
you gotta have death in a kids movie. That's right. Or Old Yeller.
Yeah, Gone with the Wind.
Or Gone with the Wind. Or that's a children's movie. When I think of children's films, yeah, oh yeah, big time. Good pick. It's funny. I'm looking at my list and I was like, man, we didn't even mention half of these. There's so many. But the one that I would recommend to folks today is going to be Into the Wild. Okay, that's a 2007 film starring Emile Hirsch. It had such great cameos from people like Catherine Keener, Vince Vaughn, Marcia Gay Harden, I think Jenna Malone, and Hal Holbrook was in it. I think Jenna Malone was in it, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, it's just a story about a young trust fund kid who goes off to school and realizes that the life that he's been destined to lead, or that his parents wanted him to lead, is not one that he wants to be a part of, and he hasn't truly found himself. So he just he gives all of his money away, gets rid of his car, and disappears. He disappears off the face of the earth and travels the country doing odd jobs in different parts, in different regions of America that he had never expected to do. I think he works driving a tractor. He works doing a lot of manual labor, and then eventually winds up in the Alaskan wilderness living in a van and unfortunately, he meets his demise at the very end of the film. I won't go too much into it, but you want to talk about one of the most thought-provoking mainstreams. It's kind of in the middle, I guess it's a mainstream / indie film. It's not super popular, but definitely one to take a look at if you want to understand what we're talking about a little bit better. That one is all encompassing for certainly on this topic. So let's go.
Neil Hirsch. He was so hot there for a minute.
You know, man. Yeah, between that and Girl Next Door, I haven't
Speed
seen
Racer.
him. Yeah, Speed Racer. I don't know. You know, that's curious. Let me look. I'm gonna look at his IMDb while we're chatting and stuff, because he really was a fantastic actor.
And that movie's based on a true story. It's a real guy, Christopher McCann.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I do remember. I remember hearing about that. So currently he is in. Looks like a couple indie films. Looks like there's the Price We Pay
films.
Yeah, or the Immaculate. That'd be funny. The Immaculate Room and Pursuit are his 3 that are coming out now. I've never heard of any of these. He was in nothing that I've seen. He was in Troll Hunters recently. Robot Chicken he did for a little bit. Yeah, nothing big. I guess I don't know. Maybe he got burnt out. Just decided to take a break. You know. But Bob, what would be your recommendation for our viewers this week?
Yeah, I mentioned this film to you last night. It's one of my faves ever. It's pretty obscure, although it was nominated for foreign film for Best Oscar. Foreign film. It's a 2015 Colombian film called Embrace of the Serpent.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Super cool movie. It is a little bit slow, but it's really great. It's shot in black and white, so it is kind of an art house film in that way. But it's about it's 2 journeys that are 30 years apart that take place with an indigenous shaman in the Amazon jungle. And so it's basically one narrative arc when he's a young shaman with an older white dude, an older explorer, and then another narrative arc when he's much older, and they kind of intertwine. And the director is a huge Kubrick fan, so I would say shout out to Ian in 2001. It has some 2001 vibes, but just like a shaman version. Super cool movie.
Awesome, man. Okay, yeah.
What's that called again?
Embrace of the Serpent.
Okay.
Check it out. Yeah.
I should write that down.
So Ian, how about you? What do you recommend this week?
Mine is somewhat obscure, somewhat known about. Film 2000, directed by Spike Jonze. I'm talking about Being John Malkovich.
Yeah, baby.
Malkovich.
Super existential.
Yeah. No, Gary.
Yeah.
Who was in that? Was that John Malkovich?
Yeah, John Malkovich is in it.
I remember hearing John Malkovich was in it.
Was he?
I think John Malkovich. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the titular John Malkovich, and but yeah, John Cusack is in a Cameron Diaz, and yeah, it's about John Cusack's character who discovers a portal that goes into the mind of John Malkovich, and he can see and hear and everything. He pretty much embodies John Malkovich.
Yep.
And
trippy movie.
For about 15 minutes, then spits him out on the side of the New Jersey Turnpike for reasons, and so and so you know they ponder the question, like, what is it to, like, what's individuality? Like, am I really me? Is Malkovich really Malkovich? When I go into John Malkovich, do I become John Malkovich? Cameron Diaz decides after going into being John Malkovich that she wants to be transsexual after that. And so John Cusack does what any man would do in this position. He would exploit it and sell tickets for people to go and become John Malkovich themselves, and then yeah, it's a wild ride.
It's just such a it's such a goofy, absurd premise. I love it. Yeah. And it's so funny. I'm sure you guys are probably even looking at your own list, being like, oh, I should have mentioned that or that. I mean, just for if anybody's curious, there are a lot of good ones. I mean, we didn't mention Birdman, The Truman Show, Taxi Driver,
Truman Show is amazing.
Big Lebowski, No Country for Old Men. There's a lot. There's tons.
Big Lebowski, I would say it would be absurdism.
It's an existential film, man. It certainly has absurdist qualities to it, sure. But
it's just your opinion, man.
That's your opinion, man.
Couldn't help it.
You're Lebowski. I'm the dude.
It's like, he just exists while the entire everything absurd goes on around him, and the movie just he doesn't even have to be in the movie, and the plot would just revolve itself. And so,
they still talk about how meaningless life is and how their actions don't matter. I mean,
and that would be the nihilism.
Yeah. And I mean, Sam Elliott, he functions like kind of like a god amazed at his own creation kind of thing.
That's a deep read of the Sam Elliott character. Wow.
I mean, I don't know, man. Well, let me put it this way: when I was at conservatory and I was taking my first film theory class, Big Lebowski was like the third movie we watched and had to do a paper on, and that was like the very first time I'd actually seen it.
I'm full of shit. So
agree to disagree. It's all right. Agree to disagree. That's what makes our conversation so awesome. Guys, once again, thank you both so much for coming on. You can catch Bob Peck and everybody there on his podcast, the Beware How Show. Bob, where are you guys currently being hosted?
Yeah, thanks, Johnny. We're on YouTube and Spotify.
Perfect, man. Perfect. And definitely, I was saying, we had a mutual friend, Aaron Conrado, and I got to check out that episode with him on it. Very informative, very fun. A lot of insightful stuff from all those guys. So definitely check it out if you're more interested in this type of philosophy moving forward. Go check them out, and they'll open your mind, baby. And then check out Ian Webb's newest show, Colton Trash Horror Movie Grind. Ian, where are you guys being hosted right now?
It's on all the podcast platforms, or if you want to see my mug, it would be on YouTube. The channel and the podcast itself is called Infamous Horror, and so there's actually a lot of different shows on Infamous Horror. Colton Trash Horror Movie Grind is one of them, and Johnny, you've been on quite a few. I guess by the time this episode comes out, you'll be on yet another one, I think.
Yeah, probably.
You're up pretty recently.
Yeah, this will be about 3 or 4 weeks from now. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect, man. Well, guys, thank you again so much for coming on. We'll definitely have to get both of you back for a myriad of other topics. Documentary and film is absolutely going to be one of them. So we'll definitely see you then. That's for sure. So from everybody here at I Don't Give a Flick, I'm Johnny.
I'm Gary.
And I'm Neil.
We'll see you guys next week. Stay classy.